Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we are talking about some reactions coming from the recent premiere of a movie or a series, and this is Daredevil Born Again. Obviously, I'm extremely anticipating this. You're probably extremely excited as well. But before we get into this, please do us a favor. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and clicking that bell. It helps us out a ton. It's completely free, and we would greatly appreciate it. But I mean, it's here, and the Netflix Daredevil show is probably what most people would consider peak Marvel television, maybe even peak superhero television. So this show has huge shoes to fill, and also Daredevil now being a huge member in the MCU, from being in No Way Home, She-Hulk, voicing in things like the recently Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. He's in the Marvel machine now, and I'm curious to see, what kind of things we'll see in this show now that he's a lot more integrated into the universe. But they just had their premiere, and people have got screeners for I think the first couple episodes of this show, and people are giving out their reaction. So we're gonna go ahead and cover these. So without further ado, let's get into this. We've got quite a few, but this first one comes from Sean O'Connell saying, "Holy Hell's Kitchen. Daredevil Born Again opens with a lengthy, devastating sequence that screams, 'This is just as brutal as Netflix.' From there, the 2 episodes lay out a layered story about cops, vigilantes, and guilt. Read Devil's Reign as a refresh. Off to a great start." That's a great first reaction, giving some comic recommendations, but also signifying that this isn't a Moon Knight situation where they're like, which TVMA, it's going to be mature, and it ends up being a couple blood splatters and stabs. It seems like they are going just as hard, which I love to hear. This next one comes from Nexus Point News saying, "Daredevil Born Again recaptures the spirit of the original series while pushing the series in a different direction. The tone and grit is authentic to the original show, and the writing never feels too dissimilar. The stellar action feels sharper and larger than the Netflix series. Daredevil fans are in for a treat." That's so great to hear, because one of the things I was very interested in when Daredevil was first coming into the MCU was just how they were going to handle his character, with the bigger MCU budget. What can we see that things in the Netflix show really couldn't with a more limited budget? And I think we saw some of those in things like She-Hulk, where he was a lot more fluid, acrobatic, a lot more, superhuman. And I really appreciated that. And it seems like maybe they'll be doing the same thing in this show, which I'm really looking forward to. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is pretty lengthy, coming from Eric Davis saying, "Marvel's Daredevil Born Again comes out of the gate hot. Among the strongest starts for a Marvel Studios TV show to date, in my opinion. The first 2 episodes are terrific, setting up a story that is part court procedural and part all-out brawling. There's a fight in episode 1 that is all done in one shot with a wild ending. Really kicks off the series in a memorable way. Honestly, reminds me a bit of The Penguin in terms of a city in chaos and a larger-than-life gangster trying to rule it all. Similar vibes, but the fights in Daredevil are already next level. This show might have some of the best brawls we've seen from the MCU. I'm instantly hooked and can't wait to see where it goes from here." That is extremely high praise, giving it comparisons to The Penguin, but also really emphasizing how great the action is in this show. And I do hope it meets that standard at the bare minimum of the Netflix series, because while they're not the most out there action sequences or fight scenes, they're extremely memorable and they're done so well. And I do hope this series is no exception. But we're gonna go ahead and move on to this next one, coming from Pop Culture saying, "I've seen 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again. It's a perfect blend of old and new. It combines the grit of the original with the flair of the MCU. Incredible bone-crunching action mixed with the focus on character development that makes Daredevil special." That was a bit quicker, but them also, emphasizing that MCU budget, though, what the MCU can bring, which is, over the top action sequences, but I do hope that it doesn't stray too far when it comes to the story they're trying to tell. And so far, from the reactions we've read so far, it seems like that is not the case, thankfully. But this next one we have comes from Liam, saying Daredevil Born Again has the best pilot of any MCU series thus far, and it's not close. Edge of my seat energy with audible gasps throughout. Charlie and Vincent haven't lost a step. Benson and Moorhead bring the sauce above all else. It's episodic. We might be back. Now, the MCU, we're back, it's over train is constantly fluctuating, but it's kind of crazy that one of the positives from this is them expressing that it's episodic, which is kind of amazing but sad when you think of the MCU television series and how they don't have showrunners and don't make it episodic. It's kind of like a big movie stretched out for 6 hours. I'm glad to hear that Daredevil Born Again isn't taking that approach and is sticking to a more episodic, television show. But this next one we have comes from Brandon Davis, saying Daredevil Born Again comes out swinging. It's a true continuation of the Netflix series. Cox and D'Onofrio haven't missed a beat. Some VFX moments are a weak spot. It kicks ass, moves quick, and takes no prisoners. Really solid first 2 episodes. Really enjoyed it and want to see more. Pretty much the same, very positive, but the highlight here I think is them expressing that the visual effects weren't up to par or were a little weak, as they said, and I'm curious to see what they're exactly talking about. But yeah, still overall extremely positive. This next one we have comes from Rachel Leishman, saying Daredevil Born Again brings my boy back to me. The fight sequences are just as violent as the original show and play with Matt's morality in such a poignant and beautiful way. Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio step effortlessly back into their rivalry. I love having my devil back, and I cannot wait to have him back as well. We've seen him sprinkled out throughout the MCU already, but him back in his own show, it's gonna feel like the character is back home. It's kind of like when Spider-Man first entered the MCU and we were like, oh my goodness, he's in Civil War, but then you got Homecoming, and when that title card, that Marvel Studios fanfare played with the classic Spider-Man theme song, it felt like home, and I do think that's the effect, hopefully, that this will have. But we're going to cover a couple more. This one coming from Eamon Jacobs. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but they said, pleased to say, Daredevil Born Again is brutally gripping and hurls a symphony of violence at the audience while perfectly capturing Daredevil's essence as if he never left our screens. It's not perfect with some awkward CGI, but it's a bloody delight. Well, that's another one expressing their qualms with the CGI. I'm really curious to see what exactly they're talking about, what moment or what specific part they're alluding to. But yeah, once again, extremely overwhelmingly positive. We love to hear that. This next one that we have comes from Justin Lawrence, saying Daredevil Born Again marks a brutal and bloody return for the man without fear. It stays true to the raw, gritty vibes of the original while embracing the MCU. D'Onofrio and Cox slip back into their roles like they'd never left after 2 intense stage-setting episodes. I'm ready for more. So one thing they said in this that I want to highlight is embracing the MCU. I'm really curious to see, now that they have that kind of access and now that Daredevil's in the MCU fully, I'm curious to see what kind of references or maybe setups or maybe things that are called out that allude to the greater and larger MCU. If you remember the Netflix Marvel verse, those shows were connected to the MCU, but the MCU never mentioned events from the shows. The shows just mention events from the movies very lightly, very subtly, but here and there. And so I'm curious to see how much that connective thread will feel now that Daredevil is part of the family. But we're going to cover a couple more. This next one coming from Brandon Norwood, saying, saw the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again and it pulls no punches. Some bold choices are made in the first 10 minutes that I hope this story lands, because if not, oh boy, would love to see more street level adult storytelling from Marvel. I really second that because I do think that's what they're missing. A lot of us thought Moon Knight was going to be that, and it ended up being a kaiju battle in the finale. But yeah, they say that they set stuff up that they hope is paid off. Otherwise, there could be some trouble, and that very much excites me, but also gives me hesitancy. You know, I do have a feeling Foggy will die in here just because of how that first Daredevil series before they scrapped everything was going, and I really do wonder the direction that this show is going to take. We're going to cover some more of these next three coming from the people over at the Movie Podcast Amazing channel, but we have Shabazz saying the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again kick off with a shocking event, setting the stage for an electrifying clash between Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk. Gritty, brutal, cinematic. It's a strong start, but struggles with pacing. Still, there's potential for a real knockout. Love to hear it. This next one though, coming from Anthony, saying Daredevil Born Again is gritty, ruthless, and unforgivingly bloody. Fans of the original series are in for a treat, echoing the first season's intensity and rage. Cox and D'Onofrio still steal the show. 2 episodes in, and all I can say is the man without fear is back. And then Daniel, part of the Movie Podcast, saying Daredevil Born Again is a powerful reintroduction to Marvel's most complex and scourged character. Cox and D'Onofrio take their rightful place in the MCU and set the stage for the darkest and most brutal chapter yet. I've seen the first 2 episodes and I'm very optimistic for the rest. That's amazing to hear, and I just love all these reactions. It seems overwhelmingly positive now. They only got to see the first 2 episodes, so we don't know how the rest of the season is. I believe the show is 8 or 9 episodes, I forget, but I'm curious to see how this differs from the previous MCU series and shows that we've gotten in the past. Obviously, we've got real highlights like Loki obviously being one that really ended on a high note, and I'm really hoping that this series is no exception. It obviously seems to have the grittiness and that rawness from the original Netflix show, but I'm curious how the MCU side of things might differentiate itself from that original series. But you guys tell me in the comments below, what did you guys think about these reactions? How excited are you for Daredevil Born Again? Anything related to this stuff, please jump in the comments below. We love discussing with you guys, and if you made it this far and you haven't, please do us a favor, like the video, subscribe, click the bell. It's completely free and it helps us out a ton. But other than that, it's been your boy 𝙎𝙬𝙚𝙀, and hopefully I will see you all in the next one.